Hello, everyone that's joining. We'll give it a few more minutes. In the meantime, where's everyone calling from? Denver, Montreal, Utah, LA, no New York. Cool, cool, cool. Letting everyone come in more. Give it a few more seconds. Cool. In the meantime, I'm from New York. Neil's from Denver. Taylor's from, I forgot where you're from, Taylor, sorry.
Salt Lake City,
Salt Lake
Utah.
City.
So maybe
Okay.
close to Sarah. She's calling in from Utah as well.
Yeah. Cool. I'll give it like one more minute and then we'll do some intros. In the meantime, if you want to drop your URL for a potential live site speed or CRO audit, drop it in your website and we'll pick two brands. So hopefully like you guys get chosen. Keep them coming. Cool. I'm going to start doing intros. I'm Ray, head of marketing at Nostra.ai, joined by Neil and Taylor, which they can do their own intros. I'll hand it off to Taylor.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Elliott. I'm the head of CRO and strategy with Simplistic. Simplistic is a Shopify Plus agency that works with a team of designers and developers and other analysts like myself to analyze your website, understand where there's areas of opportunity, and then work with these developers and designers to continuously optimize and test and grow your site's performance. I've been in the Shopify Plus space for about 8 years now or so, so very familiar with Shopify Plus and the ever evolving analytics guidelines and requirements, as well as how that motivates changes in Shopify's shopping funnel recommendations. So, really looking forward to looking at some of your sites today and talking with Nasser about how we can start preparing you guys for the most conversion optimized displays and settings for your site this year. And with that, I'll hand it off to Neil.
Yeah, I'm Neil Dino. I'm a senior customer solutions engineer at Nostra. Essentially, I help configure websites to be faster using Nostra. I'll regularly do site audits like this with our customers, and I have been a full stack engineer for the last 6 years.
Cool. Thank you guys. And I'm just going to give you a quick background on myself too. I came previously on the brand side from 10,000 and Boxu, both brands doing almost 50 mil, heading retention ecom there. Little quick thing on Nostra, we mainly focus on site speed, right? And what we typically see is we typically see 100% improvement in site speed and up to 20% improvement on conversion rate, which is pretty good to see when we do a fair A/B test of 50% of the cohort. So not only do we do site speed, but we also do cookie extension. So we were able to attribute more people that click through Meta, Klaviyo, and pretty much any cookie that you want us to extend, as well as protecting your infrastructure and your website from bots. So really quickly, let's start talking about how to streamline your workflows and understand where you should really A/B test, right? So a lot of brands typically look at websites and they're like, oh yeah, let's A/B test this when they're just like viewing a website and there's no real structure. So what brands fail to do is how to standardize this process and how to build a hypothesis and basically diverge from that and come up with different variants, right? So a lot of brands, they miss that mark and there's no SOP for that. And, they're testing blindly. And pretty much it's really important to standardize this process in making sure that you're ranking your ideas through impact and revenue and how easy it's implemented, right? And realistically, you should always be testing. Like it hurts me to see like brands never test, right? And only when they see a website and they're like, oh yeah, this is a great test idea, that's painful. So like always have like a structured A/B test roadmap, and you should pretty much like launch a test like at least once every 2 weeks, right? On at least your highest traffic page. It's really hard to it again, like it pains me to see brands like not A/B tests and only A/B tests when they come up with an idea when they're like just scrolling through the website. One thing that's also very helpful now is, using AI, right? You're able to generate briefs faster. You can make a bunch of iterations with AI. If you're a lean team, you can use AI for copy, for brand messaging, and basically, you can really streamline this whole process. And now you don't really even need a copywriter, right? Cool. I'm going to talk about like quick CRO wins, right? A lot of things for CRO comes to mind is personalization, right? How do you segment and talk to different customers through new, returning, what products they viewed, what you want to show on the website. And a lot of it is being dynamic, right? So a lot of times when you're a new customer, you want to show them bestsellers, whatever. But when you're returning customers, you know what they bought in the past, they're high AOV, low AOV. And you want to show your returning customers something different versus your new customers always, right? What products you want to show is different, what they bought in the past that's relevant. Like you don't want to show someone that basically you don't want to show, like if you have two genders on your website for selling male clothing and female clothing, you don't want to show someone that shopped male clothing female clothing, obviously, right? So you want to make sure you have that data and you're showing the right things. A lot of things that I've seen work really well, especially on my time at 10,000, was we basically showed recently viewed products that they had, and we saw like really good click rate through those and really good add to cart. Also, when you're looking at like cart segmentation, it's really important to identify like who's your low AOV shopper versus your high AOV shopper, right? And sometimes, right, if they add a sock, for instance, there could be a lower AOV shopper. Maybe we just send them lower AOV items in the cart, or vice versa. Like if they add a higher ticketed item, you would want to show them higher ticket items versus lower ticket items. But like, again, this is something that should be A/B tested and should be, constantly pressure tested to make sure like this is the best workflow and adding more products and increasing AOV into your cart. One thing that's super important, right? I believe it's like a super low hanging fruit is site speed, right? Not a lot of brands think about site speed. And unfortunately, like that's something that like not a lot of e-com people like think of. When you're increasing site speed, right, you're improving your customer experience, you're lowering bounce rates, you have higher engagement, right? Just because like, again, I always bring this up. If you go into a restaurant as a first-time customer, right, and you're waiting for your server, effectively, you're gonna be in your head like, oh, this service is slow, I'm probably never gonna come back. So it matters for returning customers and returning visitors as well. You want to have a fast site speed. So, in turn, like you give them the better experience, you increase conversion rate, and you just make the whole customer journey flowing. This is especially important in like high volume, like landing pages, home pages, PDPs. When previously, like other brands I used to work with that, implemented Nostra, our biggest PDP housed like 10 products in one. And effectively, it went from loading in 5 seconds to like 1 second. So that whole experience became way better. Cool. I'm not sure if you're ready, Neil, but if you have some sites you want to go over.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Cool. I'll let Neil pick his first site to do the site speed audit, and then we'll follow up with the CRO audit.
Cool. So let's get started here. I'm going to start with ComplyFoam here. Um, First thing I want to show here is we're not going to have time to get to everyone's, unfortunately. We do have a cool little test you can do right on our website that'll give you where you're ranking compared to the average, as well as what you could potentially save on time to first byte with Nostra. Um, what we look for mostly is your loading time on the initial document, your time to first byte. So 282 is not bad at all here. This is one that can be hard to actually lower. That's kind of our bread and butter there. But we use a few free tools when we're analyzing websites. We like Page Speed Insights. This top section's all going to show real user data. So anything you're seeing here is what actual users are seeing over the last 28 days. And then when you look down below, you're going to see exactly what you'd see running a Lighthouse. This is simulated lab data. They're
Sorry, Neil,
usually,
can you share your screen?
oh, I wasn't sharing. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thought I clicked share there. So let me go back here. So this is just the tool I was showing here. You can show how you're comparing to average. And then what you look for is you filter by document, and this one that's the main URL is going to be your first initial load time here. Up top, this is your real user metrics. And then down below is where you see more lab data. So this is showing with a Moto G phone, slow 4G internet. So a lot of this stuff you can really take with a grain of salt. It's not as bad as it's showing here. But this is where it's going to show you where a lot of your improvements to site speed can be made. You know what? My screen is it? It's sharing the right thing here. You guys are seeing page speed insights?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. So this is where you'll see a lot of things here. And now this site in particular is using Shopify. So some of these things are going to be kind of low-hanging fruit that you can change yourself. A lot of it, like this third-party stuff, short of deleting your apps, there's not a lot you can do about this. You don't really have control over what's in Klaviyo and things like that. So some of the more actionable items, this LCP breakdown is going to be a great thing to look at here. One thing you can do is on your main banner image, using this fetch priority high is great. And also combining that with eager loading is really the optimal way to show your first image. Likewise, some of your images that are below the fold, you can defer those. So using lazy loading, and then taking a look at what's going on here in this improving image delivery. Um, just sizing images properly so they're not larger than they need to be. You can go in and see which images are a little bit too large that you could save some loading time on. Another low-hanging fruit on here is going to be any unused JavaScript. So obviously, some of these third parties you're not really going to be able to do anything about, but if you see your URL in here, you can go in and look at some of that first party JavaScript, make sure you don't have things that you're just not using anymore. Same with CSS. And again, these ones shown, not really ones you can do much with here since they are all third parties. So Comply is doing really good at keeping the unused JavaScript and CSS out of their site. Um, those are really kind of the easiest things you can look into. If you're not using something like Shopify, you're going to have a lot more control of some of these things. You can really go in and you know, optimize every piece of your site. When you're using a lot of these third-party apps, the biggest thing you can do is audit them regularly. We see a lot of sites that have installed apps, done free trials, canceled those trials, and left the pixels in. That can slow it down. And you can check to see where things are unused using this tree map is a great tool here. You can go in, click unused bytes. You can see how much of apps you're using, and you might see something in here that's completely full of unused code. And maybe that's a pixel you forgot to remove or just something you're not really taking advantage of and might not need. The other tool we really like to use is CruxViz. This can give you a really good idea of how your site's performing over time. Comply has stayed pretty even. It looks like here on CLS, there was some change made in February that really brought this up, but you can see that it was corrected right here around March and it dropped right back down. So overall, the site looks really good as far as core web vitals. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Taylor for a CRO audit.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. And as Ray mentioned earlier on in the call, talking about standardizing our A/B tests and our recommendations, usually at Simplistic, what we do is we are analyzing your user behavior data and analyzing how users are moving through the funnel to make the most accurate and highest impact recommendations. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the analytics configuration that we could see from the front end of the site. Not really, obviously, we're not privy to your GA4 data, but I'm going to show you some things that you can do as long as you have a site that is connected to GA4 to really enhance your data if it's not already enhanced. And then we'll cover some of the heuristics findings on some of these core templates to support your ongoing CRO efforts. So going back to ComplyFoam, which I think some of the findings are going to apply to a lot of these other Shopify or these other e-com brands that we're looking at. But first, looking at Comply, what I'm going to do is inspect to look at their analytics debugger or use the analytics debugger to determine what sort of tracking is already applied here. So I can see right away that we have a GA4 account. So congratulations, you can do all this great custom event mapping we'll talk about with GA4, as well as some marketing pixels from Google Ads and Meta that we could, if we were analyzing your analytics, we would take all of these into account to further recommendations. But we can also use the analytics tool to determine what sort of events are tracking. So if I go through, and I'm on the mobile version here, which we'll go back to in just a second. As you know, we'll proceed with mobile-led and mobile-focused design. Often, and probably most of the brands that are here today, you're sending a lot of paid and social traffic to your sites. And even if you're not, you may be attaining first users through their mobile devices. So at Simplistic and many other agencies, we always have a mobile-led design focus, unless there is some other circumstance. So we'll go over that. But first, just looking at the analytics tool here, if I'm looking at the homepage and scrolling down, there's a couple of things that I might want to apply a custom event here so that I could better learn how users are interacting with this site. So you may have a heat mapping tool like Hotjar or Lucky Orange that shows you how far users are scrolling or what they're clicking on. But if you're not investing in one of those tools, you can use Google Analytics custom events to better measure how those specific interactions are leading or prohibiting different conversions. So as I'm looking through all this great content, we are leading with a bestsellers carousel and then trusted by leaders here. Something that I might want to do, because this directs to a content page, is to track or apply custom events to these leader icons so I can understand which of these icons, NASA, Metallica, US Army, are yielding highest interest from users. And then how are they interacting with the rest of the shoppability on the site if they are being directed to this content page early on the home page. So that's another custom event we could do. It looks like as we click through these, you can see that some of the enhanced e-commerce events, like if we go back here, like view item and likely add to cart, let's make sure that's tracking too. Yep, those are all tracking and marked as enhanced e-commerce, but we're not seeing a lot of custom events apply here. So not a lot of events for clicks on the content here or clicks on a specific tile. We would also want to look at scroll depth That way we could start prioritizing content on the homepage if you learn that only 50% of your audience is reaching below, say, this feature here. So one thing that we would continue to do throughout analyzing the user journey is where can we apply custom events to better track conversion related to those specific sections. Another thing I want to touch on in these reviews is our mobile design. I've already touched on why it's important to consider mobile design. And we can see looking at ComplyFoams here on a recent or a modern mobile device, there are a couple of opportunities to enhance this for your users. Your homepage looks pretty good, but we can see that like this section that had previous different stats looks like it's cut off here. We can see if we scroll by the section, we get more helpful information. However, a user may not be able to understand that there is additional content here. And if they're only viewing the mobile display, then they're missing out on all of that information. If we look at another core template like the PLP, we can see you have a sticky filter here, find your tips quiz. So something that we would verify on the analytics side is how impactful is the find your tips feature to conversion. But if we're looking at just the core templates here, we see that you have two different filter opportunities, which is apply or availability and by price. We might recommend expanding upon that to include different types, maybe educating the user of your different collections, like True Grip, like your non-earbuds that are there. And then when we look at the mobile application, that filter is automatically hidden and it looks like there is no sort by feature. So we're scrolling through and the user doesn't necessarily have a firm or an obvious way of browsing the catalogs. And upon load, they're not really getting a lot of information as to what the catalog categories are. So something we might recommend and that you might see on other sites, especially for mobile display, is a horizontal menu navigation for quick links to very relevant collections. So if you're driving users to an all products catalog, consider above the fold featuring your other categories that you offer and your popular collections so that users, if they're overwhelmed by all these products and not necessarily sure how to use the filter and sort functionality, then they at least get education on your variety of product offerings and they can find the one most relevant to them more quickly. And then lastly, I just want to look at the PDP, another core template for obviously driving conversion rate. I love this addition of the Shopify Shop CTA. This, as Shopify will tell you over and over again, is growing and expanding in popularity and becoming a new popular shopping channel. So putting this as well as any other express payment options on the PDP do tend to perform well. If you haven't tested that and verified that, that would be a really great and easy test to verify. However, when we look at the mobile version, we're kind of losing, right away we can see that we're losing those thumbnail images. You'll see other websites that will more in a modern mobile display feature different thumbnails upon load, either vertically here to not diminish the real estate below the gallery or underneath the gallery primary image. That way the user can see what images might be most relevant to their shopping. So if they're looking for infographics or they're looking for a close-up, they can see that thumbnail right away and engage with it instead of having to scroll through the gallery on their mobile. So again, this is applied on the desktop display, but not really here on mobile. And then scrolling down here, this leads into some good compare at feature. Love this animation. We know that having compare and informative features right after the buy box information here is supporting conversion. So that's very strong. And as we scroll down, there you can see probably this is optimized for desktop because we want to make sure we're installing better indicators so that users know that this is a scrollable feature. And then some video content. I do want to talk about video content really quickly. Later, heat maps this year have shown a higher engagement on video content than any text informative content. So it might be a valuable test to elevate the video content or even include it in your gallery if it's not already included and see if users, if you apply a custom event, see how users are interacting with it and if that's leading to higher conversion, or you could just A/B test that feature. So there should be some helpful ideas for Comply. I'll hand it back to Neil to proceed with our audit process.
Sure. Thank you. Let me make sure my screen shared this time. All right. So I'm taking a look here at Purely Elizabeth. First thing I noticed here is just it's a much higher on that first document loading time. Again, this is happening to do with the way the server is communicating with the browser. So this can be a harder one to lower. Specifically, what we deal with at Nostra. We've got a couple areas in the yellow, which is not bad. When you're in the yellow and red, the easiest ones that you're going to be able to fix are going to be these largest contentful paint and first contentful paint. So if anything's going to be in the yellow and red, this is the ones you would want. You can fix those a little bit more easily. I do want to just touch on these. I didn't come across a site that was failing either of these, but if you are to have like a cumulative layout shift that's in the yellow or red, there's a really cool tool called Layout Shift Generator. You can put your URL in here, and it's going to show you everything that's moving after the page is loaded. So if you do have some areas of improvement here, some things you can do is like, let's say you're using an app to populate this scrolling banner up top, leaving some space for that so that if it's loading in after your page loads and it's not going to have everything drop is one thing you can do there. Likewise, if you have, if you've got a reviews app, things like that are going to cause those layout shifts. So just having like a div that has the space ready to go for that. So when it does load in, it's not causing everything to shift. As far as interaction to next paint, this can be the hardest one to try to fix. Interaction to next paint is going to be mostly affected by how many user actions you have. So if you've got a lot of event listeners, you've got a lot of hover over, things like that. Heat mapping tools can affect this. Everything here is going to be really decisions on if all those things that are moving around are things that you would want to fix or not. As far as actionable items here, since it is a LCP and FCP are the ones mostly affected, it's going to be a lot of image stuff. So I did see here there is some CSS coming from Adobe causing some blockages here. There's some first-party CSS, which you might be able to look into why that's causing so much render blocking here. But a lot of it's going to be this image delivery, increasing compression or making them smaller sizes so that they're not bigger than they actually need to be on the page. Some other things we can look at here is going to be the LCP breakdown. We do have a fetch priority of high, which is good, but adding that eager loading is also going to make a huge difference there. We've got some images that can be deferred that are off screen, as well as a little bit of first-party JavaScript. So when you see your own URL here, these are things that are a little bit more actionable than the third-party apps. And a little bit of unused CSS. When we see these file sizes, 156 kilobytes doesn't sound like a huge size, but your browser still is going to have to read all of this. So it is going to cause a little bit of an issue there. As far as CruxViz, again, it's the good representation of the timeline. You can see where the ups and downs have been. You can see what's kind of stayed relatively the same. And just get an idea of what changes you're making and how they're affecting your page load speed. And Taylor, I'll let you take over here.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. And purely Elizabeth, I'm looking through and it looks like there's a lot of great examples that were kind of mentioned in the previous audit for ComplyFoam. So let's take a look here. First, this is a great example of that horizontal navigation I was speaking of earlier. That can be applicable to your homepage as you see it here. It could also be applicable to your collections page. It's a great mobile option because, again, right, as soon as I see the Purely Elizabeth logo, I can associate what categories and collections they're selling. So I already get some brand education before I've even moved on to any visuals in my vertical scan. So these quick links allow me to also avoid having to scroll maybe some unnecessary content if I wanted to right away look into their best sellers, or if I saw their viral granola, I can go into the granola collection and view that here. So I wanted to point that out, but I also wanted to look at the custom event mapping here as well. So again, similar to ComplyFoam, they have GA4 enabled, as well as some of the standard marketing pixels like Meta and floodlights is installed here. So that gives us a lot of great information. When I'm speaking of custom events and supplementing your analytics, one of the things that comes to mind, if you have a quick ad or a quick view, I highly recommend creating a quick view event. We can see if I go back here to a collection. On mobile, we have these great product tiles here. The imagery is supported with this like custom background coloring, and then upon hover, which only applies to desktop displays, so not relevant here, but we get that great little confirmation upon hover if you're looking on desktop. You also have the review stars, and then we have this add to cart event. If I were to click on that add to cart event, I can see that the add to cart event from GA4 that's already supported by enhanced e-commerce or the enhanced e-commerce conversion tracking reports that as an add to cart. But later on, if I wanted to evaluate the success of the PDP template, what I might do is see how many add to carts take place on a PDP. But if you have a successful quick ad, we want to separate these add to cart events so that I can determine how successful this quick ad feature is. So one event I would highly recommend is to add a new quick ad event that takes place when a user clicks on the add to cart on these collection pages. And that way you could see how successful it is and if it's worth continuously testing or optimizing upon, or if users need to go to the PDP in order to add to cart and need that additional information. This also helps support whether or not you need a quick view versus a quick ad. So Purely Elizabeth does a great job. We have, it's very clear that the CTA is quick add to cart. The user is expecting that the cart populates with that product that's relevant to them in the cart. As I'm here, one thing that I might recommend for the Purely Elizabeth team is to mitigate any third-party sticky elements from appearing on the cart. On desktop, that doesn't really show up as an issue, but on mobile, as you can see here, might be blocking some helpful information that I might be wanting to see before going to checkout. But like I said, this add to cart CTA really is successful in setting expectations for what it does. And if you have a quick view, you might want to test some of the verbiage there so that users are aware that they are getting a more informative pop-up or modal before they go to add to cart. As we're scrolling through here, I also see they have a promo tile within their collection grid that looks like it's optimized for both mobile and desktop. If we go to a smaller desktop view, which in Google Analytics, you should be able to access the most popular screen resolutions. That way, as you and your team are deciding what designs or tests you want to optimize, you could prioritize the most popular screen resolutions that your users are using. But as we go to the smaller screen size, let's say that this screen size is a very popular page. What I might recommend is minimizing the tiles or making a 4-column or testing a 4-column grid. That way users see more products upon load instead of 3 product tiles taking up the majority of the real estate here. But we still do have the sticky header, which is nice to see on desktop and mobile displays, so I could continue my browsing if wanted. And this promo tile is optimized for desktop and mobile, so that's great to see. Let's take a look at a product page template as well. So again, this could be not their most popular screen resolution, but if it was, I would say that we would want to optimize the buy box information. So it's a little bit smaller, add to cart is readily available upon view, and then any other supporting information is available upon load. Otherwise, if you're used to a bigger screen resolution, like if I see here, that is all included here. The thumbnails are dropped to the bottom. and it's no longer sticky on this longer resolution, which is great. So I can quickly access all the information below here. Love these little animations and parallax scrolls that are happening. If you aren't using any parallax scrolls or animations, but you know that you have a very helpful, informative section, sometimes those little confirmation animations are a great way of alerting user to that valuable section, if you know that it is performing well and you know that it is helping drive conversion, which, as we talked about last time, video content is really helpful and successful at doing that. And we are seeing that more and more in 2025 going on to 2026. Then we have product reviews. This is likely supported by Yotpo here, so that's great. And then another introduction to various categories. One more thing I want to touch on is just the cart before I hand it back to Neil. Oops. Okay, well, here's one thing that maybe this might be a purely Elizabeth team bug to look at, but when I try to click on my cart, looks like that 3 animation is overtaking it and I'm not allowed. Maybe if I reload my page on a different page. No, it looks like, okay, cool. So it does take a little bit. Maybe that animation is conflicting. And even though I just said animation is great for highlighting these great informative sections, any critical functionality that allows you to add to cart, view cart, or purchase, we want to keep it as simple as possible so that we don't run into any friction points like this one right here. But perfect. So it looks like it takes a couple times to load, but then we can see this information. I also love the subscribe and save 15%. This is likely supported by an app called Rebuy. If you are offering subscriptions, highly recommend having an upsell or cross sell for your subscription in your cart page to promote that discount and retain a new active subscriber instead of a one-time purchase. The only other addition I might make to this checkout, we can see that we have the free shipping progress banner. We have the upsell for subscriptions. We also have recommended products upsell, which if this is also supported by Rebuy has a lot of inherent A/B testing tools. So if you wanted to show 2 of these products in the single scroll, you could do that. Or if you wanted to try a vertical grid, you could try that and A/B test within Rebuy what works. So if you already have a Rebuy account, look into their A/B testing capabilities if you haven't already. But the only other thing I might add is education around the express payment options. We saw in Comply, they highlighted the Shop Pay option. You could highlight that without functionality below here if you offer Apple Pay, Shop Pay, Google Pay, just to alert the user that that is available upon checkout and their favorite purchase platform is available to use at the next step. So I think with that, I'll go back to Neil and we'll continue our audit.
Great. So the next one I've got here is we're going to take a look at local eclectic. You mentioned a lot about video. Some ways I just want to mention a couple ways you can optimize video is because typically that will be your slowest loading asset is your videos. So some things that can be done is like loading the thumbnail as an image prior to loading the entire video. Something else could be if you're using like a third party, such as YouTube, that's going to specifically make it for the device size that your user's on. So it can help a little bit with your loading. But you will typically see when you're looking at something on PageSpeed Insights, videos are always going to be your largest assets. So keep that in mind. It's great to use them. They draw attention. We don't put too many of them in, or you're gonna really affect the site speed. On this site here, we're seeing really good Core Web Vitals for desktop. We've got everything in the green except cumulative layout shift, just a little in the yellow. And that's one of those ones you could take a look and see if it's one of your third-party apps causing things to shift and just add that space in there. For mobile, that cumulative layout shift is fine. A little bit over on interaction to next paint. As I mentioned before, this one can be a little bit difficult to try to fix. It's usually going to be your heat mapping tools and how many event listeners and things that are caused by user interactions. So can be a little bit harder if you have a lot of things you click, a lot of hoverovers, things like that. But it is something that you you can take a little bit of a look into, and maybe you have things that don't get used very often that you might be able to reduce those. Um, so on the image delivery, looks like this could be compressed. Shopify does compress it on its own, so you can manually add compression, but it is probably already being compressed by Shopify. These are always going to be your lowest hanging fruit right here. You're just going to go in, look what images are on there. Now, I have mentioned before that, like, it is hard to do things with third-party apps, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything. Some apps need to load right when the page loads. Some apps, such as like reviews, don't need to be fully loaded by the time your page loads. So you can find those scripts and you can actually defer them. You would just go into either, if you're on Shopify, go into your liquid file, or go into your source code if you're not using Shopify, and you can just find those scripts and add defer. So like this one here. So anything you do need to figure out though if it's needed for load. If it is needed for load, it could cause you issues by deferring it. So make sure it's not something that's needed right at load time. LCP discovery. This is great. It's showing right here exactly what you can do to add on to there. One thing you don't want to do is lazy load that first image. Every other image that's below that fold, it is great to lazy load. You should lazy load all of them. But anything that's going to be there right when your customer gets to your site, you want to make sure that that's being eager loaded with that high fetch priority. DOM size is another thing you can look at. It's just how many elements are within your site. Um, there's no real like exact number you want to shoot for, but anything you can reduce is the better. So if you're using a heat mapping tool, you see that no one ever goes to a certain part, you can look at that as maybe something to reduce. If you're using a lot of nesting, maybe if it's possible to reduce some of those nested elements, that can help you reduce that DOM size. Going to improve loading time. Is it going to drop your site's loading site speed by a second? Probably not, but in site speed, every 100 milliseconds can be 1% conversion rate. So any little bit that you can do is always gonna help out. As far as reducing JavaScript time, there are quite a few first-party scripts you can take a look at. This is always great to just see if anything's unused, see if maybe you've got some inefficient code in there. These are all things you can control, whereas a lot of the other ones you don't have full control of. Couple images that can be deferred that are off screen, and that is just done with just adding lazy loading to those. Another thing I wanted to show on this is just to use the tool. You can also filter this by the areas you want to improve. So if you don't want to look through everything on here, you can just look at just the areas of what you're trying to improve. As far as the crux viz, everything stayed pretty stable. Looks like you got a slight uptick right here in June. So maybe take a look at what changed here. That one is for the interaction the next paint. So maybe take a look at what happened here and what started causing this slight uptick here. What was really cool to see here is your CLS had a huge drop right around January, around December to January. So it'd be interesting to take a look here and see what you change here that caused this really, really drastic improvement to the cumulative layout shift. I don't have too much else. We can take a look at the tree map, see if we have much unused bytes. So everything appears to be being used. This Google Tag Manager one, but that's not one you can get rid of. So it's not one that matters too much. But yeah, overall, site speed looks pretty good as far as real user metrics. I'll pass it on over to Taylor.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Neil. For this one, I'm going to try to focus on things that apply specific to this brand, but also to all of you other brands on site here or on the call. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So there's two things first on the homepage that I want to point out that I saw. One is the navigation here has a lot of different categories, which could be exactly what your users need. But if we look deeper in the data, we might see that that's causing some paralysis analysis, or some of these may not be higher converting collections or options. One way, again, to figure that out is to apply custom event. So one thing that we do for nearly all of our brands out here at Simplistic is that we will apply a custom event on the navigation element and then start tracking individual clicks on based on copy. So if I wanted to see how many users this month clicked on bestsellers and then how many of those users converted, and compare that to how many users clicked on new finds and how many users converted after clicking on new finds, that'll give me and empower me with the data needed to make decisions on this navigation to see if we could slim this down or if we want to continue to expand it. Because we have quite a few different categories here, and we might find that you're getting very small interaction or small engagement on, let's say, charms, but that it's converting really well, or that you're getting a lot of search terms, which you can also see in Google Analytics, or on-site search terms in Google Analytics, and seeing that people are searching charms. That might motivate us to elevate this into the navigation, making it easier to find and make the navigation more impactful for the browsing user. The other thing I noticed on the homepage is the hero section right here. We've got some great imagery, or we've got this great video in the back that highlights one of your key products. And we also have this great imagery that I feel like gives me a feel for your brand aesthetic and gives me a feel for the sort of products I can expect or the offerings I can expect on the site. However, this overlay of text isn't supported by any contrast. So this would be, I would say, an ADA concern, which we definitely don't want on the homepage above the fold. So I might look at applying some sort of opaque or some percentage of transparency instead of 100%, so that this is really clear to see. And then I know that this is build charm necklace right away. Same with the video image. We want this to be really clear and indicative of what the image is supporting. And also we might take a look at how we can modify this video so that it gives me, I think it's a little bit zoomed in, so I'm not totally sure upon a couple of watches here exactly what this supports, but since this is back in stock and probably a very key product, it may be targeting the audience that this content is desired to target. One thing also that we talked about previously with Comply and with Purely Elizabeth that we see featured on Local Collectic is, again, on the collection pages, these horizontal scrolling navs. So if you needed further evidence to see that this is a very standard piece of UX UI now, especially in more recent years, highly recommend something like this. So again, users could have these different shopping paths upon load, click the one that's most relevant to them, and start viewing those products more quickly. So we see that here. Another thing, if I go back over here, going back to the home page. Oh, actually, sorry, let's go back to the home page. Following the hero section with your top categories, that is very successful usually. I might recommend or consider testing this as a horizontal menu as well. That way it is, again, high above the fold. You can see all of the different categories, and then you could go on to these more visual product cross-sell opportunities for bestsellers, for trending collections, etc. And then another thing that I saw, this pop up here, this little modal is advertising the app. So if you are supporting an app where you're trying to drive more traffic to the app, this is a perfect way to do that. It pops up upon load. I've tested it that it's popping up upon load of a couple of different pages. But just keep in mind that as you're evaluating your conversion goals and then your app sign-up goals, that they will conflict with one another. So a user who has high intent to purchase and maybe some brand familiarity might be more likely to get on the app and potentially convert from there, which would be a loss of conversion on site. Again, totally just matters for your business objectives. You may be okay with a couple of months of lower conversion in favor of this app. However, as we go forward into Q4 and preparing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, really work with your team to align on what is your priority goal. Is it driving on-site sales, or is this the quarter where you know you're going to get a lot of traffic? So the highest priority is to get app signups or app downloads, which you could do here. Also going back to the navigation. So again, a lot of options here. Custom event mapping would help us decide what is most converting and what's most supporting. But I would also consider finding a way to bring these visuals up before or on the top tier here. So right now I have to employ a click before I can see some of your most promoted products. I have to employ another click to see all of these categories. So one way to get around that and to promote your highest items is either above this menu or below it, feature some of those images that are promoting those higher performing collections and higher performing products early on. So we are mitigating as few or as many unnecessary clicks as possible. And then lastly, I want to go look at the PDP of this beautiful ring right here. Also local eclectic. If you ever want somebody to test out your product, hit me up. Would love to go shopping here. But the PDP is really great for mobile. We can see that these touch points are just big enough for the mobile user. We have all the variants with similar CTA styling, so that's great. We see that there's a high priority for wish list. I could tell that because it's also on the header nav. One thing I might test is, unless you have a high engagement on the wish list, is to mitigate this from or remove this from your header so that you're still placing importance on the account and then the shopping bag, which we always want the shopping bag to be free of any friction points or any unnecessary frustration clicks. We also see rebuy is employed here as well for complete the look, for great cross-sale placement, and additional cross-sale placement. So that's awesome. If you have rebuy, like we saw Purely Elizabeth does as well, consider optimizing the PDP by adding these various touch points throughout the layout for cross-sell opportunities, instead of only having one cross-sell opportunity right here, which Local Eclectic does here with these two other cross-sell opportunities. So that's good. We see some BVP categories here and the brand message. So that is excellent. Another thing that we'll look at just one more time is the cart, which if we're looking, we can see there's that progress banner letting the user know how far away we are from free shipping. If you offer free shipping at any tier, definitely make sure this is in your cart. Let's see, we've got this edition extra cotton jewelry pouch for $1. If you add that, I would kind of want to see an image of that potentially. Oh, there it is. So maybe that's something you could expand upon in the cart. But then it looks like once you add that additional item, it does remove or negate the you may also like widget. So I might recommend keeping you may also like no matter what, so that this is consistently available to browse as the user's looking at their item on their cart, regardless of any other upsell purchases here. And then, like I said last time, we have a feature of Shop Pay and Klarna. So that is informative, and consider if there's any other express payment options you might want to feature on your cart experience. I think that about wraps it up for our first initial review here for Local Eclectic. So I'll hand it back to Ray or Neil.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions before we do any closing remarks? Put it in Q&A. I'll give it like 20 seconds. Okay, I'm just gonna do the closing remarks really quickly. If you're curious and you want to know more about Nostra or have your site looked at, please use this good demo. I'm gonna send it to everyone in the chat right now, but don't miss out, right? This is on September 30th will be the last time we will allow A/B tests. So please book a demo before then. We literally do a free 30-day proof of concept. So you'll see that incremental lift in CRO, in site speed. So you can definitely see and measure the ROI of Nostra. So please, if you're interested, book a demo and we'll talk to you soon. Taylor, if you have any closing remarks.
Yeah, I'm just going to, because I've got a couple questions on it, I'm going to share in the chat right now the extensions that you saw on my screen share. So the one to enable different mobile views or views on different device types is there. And then the analytics debugger, which is accessible via the Chrome Dev Tools extension. You can access those there. They're both free, although feel free to tip the developers. And yeah, if you have any questions or want to discuss CRO further, if you feel like you want to get feedback on your site, don't hesitate to hit me up at Taylor@Simplistic, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. Hope everyone else has a great day.